Coming up on Network Africa, the death toll rises to 200 in Mozambique after Cyclone Idai wreaks destruction. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa visits the country's further Chimanimani area after cyclone winds and floods batters the area. Residents and property owners pay respect to those who died on March 13th after a building caved in here in Lagos. Welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. We begin in Mozambique, where 3 days of national mourning has begun after powerful cyclone winds and flooding killed hundreds of people and left a massive trail of destruction across a swathe of Southeast Africa. The number of people killed has risen above 200, more than doubling the country's death toll from a storm that could rank as one of the worst weather-related disasters in the Southern Hemisphere. 6 days after Cyclone Idai made landfall in Mozambique, survivors are searching for what's left of their homes.
500,000 people have been affected by cyclone winds and floods in southeastern Africa. The United Nations says it's one of the worst weather-related disasters recorded in Southern Hemisphere. Cyclone Idai made landfall in Mozambique 5 days ago at a speed of up to 105 miles per hour, wrecking roads, flattening buildings, and submerging villages. Mozambique's president estimates over 1,000 people have died, and the Red Cross says the full horror of the tragedy is still to emerge.
Colleagues talked of flooding perhaps in parts as deep as 6 meters, covering roofs, covering palm trees, covering telephone poles. The reports from the assessment that went out yesterday, which was government UN, were that people were huddled on rooftops, huddled in trees, desperately looking for someone to come and support them. Obviously, search and rescue is the major priority, but soon after that is shelter.
On Wednesday, Pope Francis expressed his sorrow for the countries hit by cyclone, praying for the victims and their families. Rescue workers are still struggling to reach survivors, many of whom are trapped in remote areas with no way out. Even those who withstood the devastation in Mozambique's port city of Beira are struggling to start rebuilding their lives.
We don't have anything to eat here, no food, nothing. It's a problem. At night, we can't sleep. We don't have a blanket to cover ourselves with. We only have the clothes we're wearing. It's hard to die, but we want to live. But we're suffering. We have been suffering ever since.
Aid workers say the full extent of the devastation is still to be assessed, and several rivers are about to burst their banks, meaning more areas could soon be covered by water.
The horrors out of Mozambique, the United Nations World Food Programme has begun distributing food aid in the country to reach victims affected by cyclone winds and floods. WFP Director of Emergencies, Margot van der Velden, said airplanes and helicopters with staff and food aid landed in Beira while food distribution started in the flooded areas. A World Food Programme warehouse in Beira was badly damaged, but some food remained intact. And WFP is providing cereal to those sheltering at 18 schools and churches in this town from what is in stock. Beira is a low-lying coastal city of 500 people. It's also home to Mozambique's second largest port, which serves as a gateway to landlocked countries in the region.
The situation in Mozambique, we're confronted with severe flooding and cyclone effects. 600,000 people affected, possibly even going up to 1.7 and more million people affected by cyclone and flooding. Communication completely broken, infrastructure severely damaged, particularly in the city of Beira, but also all the roads to Beira have been cut off. What WFP is doing at the moment, we're helping with the assessments, we're bringing in food through with airplanes and helicopters, we're bringing down helicopters, and we've started the food distribution for all the people affected in the flood and the cyclone affected areas.
Also affected by Cyclone Idai is Zimbabwe, which is still struggling to cope with the full impact of the storm. It's left thousands of people homeless in the east of the country. The Minister of Defense, Opa Muchinguri, has admitted the government failed to anticipate the magnitude of the cyclone, which also smashed into Malawi and, of course, came from Mozambique. Medicines are reportedly running out and resources are stretched to breaking point, with rescuers in a race against time to reach survivors. President Emerson Mnangagwa visited the country's flooded Chimanimani area on Tuesday after cyclone winds and floods swept across the country.
I have come in order to visit the families, communities, as well as the infrastructure briefed has been destroyed, so we can assess and determine what government can do in terms of assistance. We need to make sure we understand the quantum of devastation in order for us to mobilize resources to deal with the situation as it stands. Countries like South Africa, Botswana, Namibia and Angola have indicated that they also would want to know what our needs are, and we are busy now compiling materials which we think they could assist us with.
Here in Lagos, property owners and residents are still watching in despair as a city building control agency continues pulling down defective houses on the island. But they spared a moment to pay respects to those who've died when a building caved in on March 13th. Our correspondent, Dario Dewu, reports that the structures which were brought down failed the integrity test.
Just before we have opening prayer, we would like for us to sing.
It's a solemn atmosphere. The survivors gather under one tent with clerics offering prayers for the departed. A non-governmental organization, House of Prayer, has set up a relief camp since the collapse of the three-story building at the Tafaji area of Lagos Island. The organization says it is collaborating with other concerned groups to cater for the displaced persons.
It is time that Nigerians begin to take a full responsibility for their community. And we just think as a people that we should take complete responsibility for this. Many times you find that things like this happen and nobody seems to know what has happened to the displaced. So the first thing we did was to make sure that we set up a tent, an operation desk right here at the scene of it, where we engage all the agencies to be able to create some level of synergy amongst them.
The massive street collapse appears to have called the attention of government to more structurally defective buildings in the area, as more buildings are now being pulled down. This is the site of another demolition here in Lagos Island, and this is coming a week after a collapsed building killed some school children here in Lagos Island. Well, the Lagos State Building Control Agency says many more of this kind of building considered unfit will go down in the coming days. But the question or the concern is whether this approach is remedial or preventive.
We are in a critical emergency situation, and in emergency situation, it's critical issues require critical solutions. We can't wait any longer for people to be killed.
The demolition exercise started since Friday last week. Till today, we have already done up to 16 buildings, apart from the one ongoing.
Affected shop owners say government must be tough in enforcing relevant laws to nip the scourge of building collapse in the bud.
Lagos State has to decide who is supposed to be a developer, and to make sure that they supervise them, they monitor them as they are doing.
The way government is doing now, they should continue to help us. And when anywhere they want to do innovation or they want to build house again, they should help us come and check the way they want to do the foundation of the place.
The debris of the three-story building, which is now at ground zero, is cleared, but the memory is still vivid.
Raquip Taiwo, 20 months, female.
The roll call of those who lost their lives is done, evoking strong emotions among families and survivors of the collapse. Daredo, Channels Television News.
We pray for the families who have lost someone in any of the building collapse. To Kenya now, where the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union wants the deal with Kenya and Cuba terminated following the death of Dr. Hamisi Ali Juma from Mombasa country. Now, this is an issue that's been ongoing in Kenya for a while now. A statement released by the KMPDU Secretary General, Dr. Uma Oluga, says Dr. Juma was found dead on Sunday in his hostel in Havana. He had been on a Kenyan government sponsorship for family medicine studies. He said the program should be closed immediately as it is proven not beneficial to the doctors. Dr. Uma joins us now to shed more light on the issue. He is in Kenya right now. Dr. Uma, thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you, thank you.
First of all, our condolences on the death of your colleague. But let's ask again what the healthcare system in Kenya is like, especially for doctors, not just for patients.
So Kenya's healthcare system is organized. It's a mixed healthcare system. So there's a private sector, there's the public sector, and majority of Kenyans use the public health sector, which caters for up to 96%. But there's also a significant contribution from the private sector, which involves mostly faith-based organizations setting up hospitals. So we have the Christian hospitals and we have the Muslim hospitals. And then we have a few private for-profit hospitals. And the biggest hospitals are actually non-profit hospitals. And then the largest chunk of the health sector is managed by the public sector. So the public sector is managed. We have a decentralized system with the administration called the county government. So we have 47 of these small administrative units that we call county governments, and they are led by governors. And then we have the Ministry of Health that also takes care of the referral system, takes care of the issues of disease outbreaks, takes care of standards and regulation, and also takes care of training and capacity support for the county government. So in a nutshell, that is the organization of the healthcare.
Yeah, because we're trying to understand, this relationship between Kenya and Cuba, and the fact that you're sending doctors, people who are already doctors, to Cuba. Is there an area of specialty they're actually going to receive training for?
So in last year, 2018, the Kenyan government ended agreement with the Cuban government for capacity support. So, and the Cuban government was giving the Kenyan government 100 doctors who they said were specialists. And then Kenyan government also sending doctors to Cuba for training on this so-called specialization for family medicine. We as a union opposed this arrangement because it was too expensive for the taxpayers in Kenya. And number two, it's because that there were doctors who were locally available to be employed, but the Kenyan government ignored them, instead preferring to pay a very expensive arrangement with the Cuban government. And so they took 50 doctors, and the Kenyan government has neglected these 50 doctors in Cuba. And recently, this has triggered frustrations, and that has led even to, that could be linked to the death of one of the doctors, Dr. Ali Juma Hamisi, who was actually our member and comes from one of the county governments. And this is very unfortunate because there have been concerns raised on the treatment of these doctors by the Kenyan government while they were in Cuba. The arrangement was that the Kenyan government was supposed to pay for all their living expenses and also pay for their education. But the Kenyan government has been unable to do so. And these doctors have found themselves very desperate, and they are living in very humiliating conditions. They travel 4 or 5 hours a day just to get to classes. Sometimes they're not supported. They cannot connect with their families. A majority of them have expressed desire to come back. And we as a union are demanding that the Kenyan government immediately expatriates them back to Kenya. And if they do not do so, we are already having plans to raise funds for their air tickets so that they can all come back. One of them has already managed to come back, and one of them has passed on, so there are only 48 of them remaining. The irony is that the Cuban doctors who are in Kenya are treated very lavishly. They have been put on the highest pay scale for government. They are earning more than 3 times the doctors here in Kenya. They are having chauffeur drivers. They are houses that are well furnished, air conditioned. They have food that paid for. Yeah.
Well, I honestly wish we could talk some more about this. I have so many questions about what's going on, but we do hope the Kenyan government responds to this issue, especially with the doctor who died in Cuba. We'll take a break now on Network Africa. Still ahead. As one for the adrenaline junkies, a team of racing enthusiasts hoping to put Egypt on the international scene by motorsports. Introduction into a locally assembled racing car. I must have jumbled that up. Well, stay tuned to find out.